Today we are going back to the Quran. I have done some before, but this will be different this time. Now, this file, by the way, these files are going to have a different name. They're going to be called Quran Brown, B-R-O-W-N, B-R-O-W-N, and then 1, 2, 3, depends on how many we make. That is because I came across something in here that is entirely fascinating. This is because of Norman O. Brown, who I like. Many people do not, but I do. He's a thinker. And his book, Love's Body, is where I have learned a great deal about thinking and his way of thinking and what words are. Also, one of the last books he wrote was a series of lectures that were put into book form. And this book, as you can see right here by Norman O. Brown, is called The Challenge of Islam, the Prophetic Tradition, Norman O. Brown Lectures, and the introductions and additions. Now, one thing about this book is, first of all, it's quite long, and it has many good lectures, and I haven't read them all yet. But one that's particularly interesting to me is the lecture number 3 called Islam and Christianity. Now, naturally, because I have been a Christian studier and a Christian theologian, and I also am familiar with the Quran and Islam, I was quite interested in this chapter. So what he is doing essentially in this chapter is taking two of the, what you might call unorthodox parts of Christianity. That is a way of Christian thinking and interpreting that does not fall within the boundaries of what we call normal Christian thinking or interpreting. These two things are called, each one, Gnosticism, and the other one is called Docetism. Gnosticism, and Docetism, Docetism. Now, Docetism is the one that he's particularly interested in here. By the way, before I go into this in detail, I do want to say something else about this book by Norman O. Brown. He makes a statement in here that most of this book is an introduction to the famous English writer and painter and so forth, William Blake. He said this whole book is an introduction to William Blake. And what is the very first picture you see when you open the book is William Blake. And that is called William Blake. Laocoon, Laocoon, around 1820. And if one were to read all the text, as you can see, it's written all around it, not just below it, but that's Blake's typical style. He'll write his text all around something. One of the things about William Blake is the idea of the way of knowing is through creative imagination. That is to say, not by any particular doctrine or any particular Christian practice in theology, but creative imagination. Now, the one I did my work on at seminary is the great Russian philosopher Nicholas Berdyaev, and one of the great books he wrote was The Power of the Creative, or the Creative Imagination, or The Power of Creativity. That is very similar. So when we get to this First of all, I am going to tell you what he found in here, which is Docetism, and why it relates to Christianity and Islam. So, when we continue with this, we will go into that in a little more detail. We will be using, of course, not just this book, but we will be using other books on the Quran. In fact, we will be using 3 or 4 of them in addition to this particular one to go through this entire idea. So this will be saved in the Quran folder, but this one will be called Quran